Video game themes are about more than just a simple backing track to get you pumped for a fight. A good theme tells you about who you're fighting and gives context to the boss fight itself. And one franchise that does this perfectly is Pokémon. A character's theme can convey their growth and strength, the aura of mystery that they hold, or how much they like to get down. All through the theme, which is all fine and good. But I'd love to take this a step further. As Pokemon's Sword and Shield have shown us, the only real government officials in the world of Pokemon are oligarchs and champions, neither of which face a lot of regulation or judgment. So it's important for us to look at the economy they've created in their region and how they represent it. Most leaders would handle this with a military parade or a monument of some kind. But not these overdone thematic dogfighters. Today, we'll be ranking which Pokemon Champion is the best, based on how expensive it would be to have a live orchestra play their theme every time you battle them. This is gonna be fun. Now, before we begin, I'd like to establish some ground rules. Firstly, each instrument will need a musician on it. As of 2011, the median wage of a musician was $22.99 an hour, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But that seems pretty low for someone good enough to play a champion's theme. In order to properly find out how much this job should pay, I would need to find a musician, singer, arranger who gets paid regularly for those things.
Hi, my name is Will Riddle. I am a guitarist, musician, singer-songwriter, and, sometimes I get paid to do those things.
Close enough. As a professional guitarist and composer, Will works short but high-profile gigs that should pay closer to what we're looking for in a champion battle.
You get hired to play this gig, 6 to 10 minute gigs, multiple times per day potentially. How much do you charge?
Yeah, so for a gig like this, you're guaranteed a lot of battles per day. And you're talking about per musician and not counting tip. You gotta tip your musicians. I'd probably say $30 per battle, something like that.
I did not tip Will for this interview. Additionally, I'm going to factor in an extra $50 for the conductor, who also has to watch the battle and make the doo-doo, 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 doo-doo sound when the Pokemon get into the red. Secondly, I'm going to factor in the cost of instruments into every fight. While in real life you can and should use the same instrument from performance to performance, when you're sitting on the sidelines of a super-powered National Geographic, you're probably going to experience some damage and be needing to replace your instruments quite frequently.
So as a guitarist, what guitar would you bring to this?
Yeah. So for a gig like this, you'd probably want to have a really versatile instrument. You definitely want to be electric, big stadium rock, or any kind of music. You gotta be amplified.
That's right.
I'd say that probably you'd want to go with a Stratocaster, something like this. It's a Squire model, but the American Professional is kind of the go-to high-quality version, and that will run you $1,449.99 United States.
I'll be assuming that these musicians purchase rather high-end, pricey instruments, but nothing crazy like a $15 million Stradivarius. To ensure we're hitting a concert-appropriate price range for all instruments, I called up a bunch of professional musicians to get their input on their respective sound. They all agreed this idea was stupid, but were overall very helpful. Next, we're not going to be filling out entire sections. If there's one violin or trumpet melody, we're going to have one violin or trumpet. Otherwise, proper string sections would become ludicrously expensive. On the other hand, some instruments, such as pianos and organs, can play multiple parts at once, and so I doubt we'll ever need more than one of those per song. Lastly, if a character has multiple champion themes in multiple games, they will get to use whichever one is higher. For example, this means that Steven Stone can use his Ruby Sapphire theme or his Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire remake theme, but not his Super Boss theme from Emerald, as he's technically not fighting you as a champion. Same goes for the World Tournament matches, cameo fights, or gym leaders who later become champions. With that being said, here are the standard instrument prices we'll be using throughout the video. Let's launch into it. Our first two champions, Blue and Lance, get kinda screwed here in their initial appearances. The cartridge was only able to save chiptune synthesizer sounds. So both of them are limited to just high-end synthesizers, coming in at $300. Both of these guys sit at the bottom of the barrel at $460 total. For Generation 3, we have Steven and Wallace. Thankfully, both of these champions use the same theme, and while it is heavily synthesized, there's enough timbre to assume what instruments are being represented. With that, there's nothing super uncommon here, but on that note, I want to show the timpani, as it's possible some people might not know what it is and be confused by the whopping $15,000 price tag. Timpanis are massive drums that have to be hand-hammered to have the proper resonant sound. You absolutely cannot machine work the copper body of a timpani. And so it's locked in at that high price, bringing Gen 3 in at $145,460. This is also where Blue gets his chance at redemption, as his new theme stands out with a timpani, multiple electric guitars, and a very expensive Studio Yamaha Grand, which comes in at $120,000. With his new ensemble, Blue sits at a pretty $172,590. Generation 4's Cynthia is a fan favorite, of course, and so it's only fitting that she also has a bit of a pricey theme with the piano-timpani combo. But sadly, she by no means tops this list at $158,580. That being said, I am still eternally terrified of her Garchomp. Lance's Heart Gold Soul Silver battle also isn't by any means the most pricey, but does use one of the first really uncommon instruments, the cor anglais. You've probably never heard of it, but it's essentially a longer oboe. I'm sure all our oboe players in the audience know that the instrument has a lower range and an upper range, but struggles in that middle section. Cor anglais, however, sits between those ranges, and so it's able to give us this faint rising pattern in the middle of Lance's $151,480 theme. Moving right along to get to one of my personal favorites, the Rubik's Cube King himself, N. Yes, I know he refused the title, but he's effectively the champion for the game, and I just like him a lot. Shut up! Aside from the surprisingly low rate for an in-house choir that I was given, N hits this challenge hard by using a whole-ass pipe organ in his theme. If you want to build the bellows, keyboard, pedals, and pipes for your fight, you're looking easily at $200,000 per organ, or $207,430 per fight. Thankfully, this only needs to be built once, as N is champion for only about 20 minutes before you show up and beat his friends into submission in front of his pageant mom of a father. This returns the title back to Alder, for some reason, who has a theme of his own. While it's not very expensive instrument-wise, there are two things to note. Firstly, Alder's theme pushes the hell out of his musicians, as the trumpet stays on a high C for a huge part of the melody, which is the absolute limit to what a lot of trumpeters can play. Secondly, there's clapping. In Alder's theme, I'm not going to add a musician cost for this one, because I just like the idea of Alder battling his heart out, and then occasionally just $9,305. Next up is Iris. Not gonna lie, this 12-year-old has a pretty bumpin' theme. She also uses the Celeste or bell piano, which comes out to a cool $30,000. Her whole kit then checks out at $164,145. Also, she's 12. I know most of the protagonists are like 10, but it's weird to have the champion you fight also be 12. She's 12. Steven's new Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire theme is pretty great, but by the rules of this list, isn't that impressive. It only really adds the marimba and pan flute to be unique and quirky, and then tacks on an extra $4K for those, bringing the total up to $149,230. The Sun and Moon themes are, well, weird, because you're the champion. Also, the league is so new that it doesn't really seem like you have any kind of bearing on local government. I debated even including these, but here are their prices. They don't add anything new, except the Ultra theme has a whistle. I love the concept of defending the championship from the start, but the theme doesn't really fit the list. I'll give the Ultra theme a little award for also having the most musicians on the list at 17, but that's it. That's it. And that takes us to Leon, who's also really hard to classify. This time because of his actual theme. It's mostly digital instruments, which lowers the price a lot, but then you have an entire stadium who claps and cheers for him. I'd normally write this off as just fans coming to support their champion, but when they start to sing around the 2-minute mark, it's way more in tune than I've ever heard at any sports event. So maybe they are performers? I'm just gonna split the difference and tack on an extra $1,500 to hire a team of 10 cheerleaders. NFL cheerleaders make roughly $100 a game, and so this is fine. And that's everyone. Here are the final rankings and scores, and that should be it. No super forgettable champions that I glossed over or anything like that. Okay, jokes aside, Diantha's theme is really good, but she doesn't have a lot of memorable moments in the story or a sequel game. Breaking her theme down, it is unique in that it uses a lot of percussion. Sure, there's a violin, a synth, and a guitar, but beyond that, it's glockenspiel, xylophone, marimba, and so on. It's nothing impressive. So there's definitely something weird playing during that part. And those bells are way lower than any chimes could play. When listening closely, Diantha's theme has some crazy instruments. Firstly, those high pings during the first section aren't bells, they're anvils. Back in the 1800s, Richard Wagner and Giuseppe Verdi used what's called an anvil chorus. Wagner's famous for using it in his epic music drama, The Ring Cycle, Rheingold. But those are just hunks of iron. What really sets Diantha's theme apart are those booming, low bells. That's a carillon, the largest breed of instrument. It's a massive tower full of bells, played from the inside on a giant keyboard. And there are only about 180 of them in North America. If I want to learn how much one of these things costs, I'm going to have to go to an expert.
I'm Margot Halstead, and I'm a professor emeritus from the University of Michigan. I play keyboard instruments, piano and organ and carillon.
This is Professor Margot Halstead. She's recognized as one of the top carillon players in the world. And she's also my grandma. Let's say I'm some rich, fancy pants, government official who decides I want a carillon in my house. How much is that going to cost me to build?
They have to have a very large house. You need a tower to put the bells in, and they would be heard out. You wouldn't put the carillon in your house. If you're building a tower and putting carillon in, the more bells you have and the bigger they are, the bigger the tower would be and the taller. You could get up to millions of dollars.
Yeah, millions. Thankfully, this song only requires a few notes from the carillon, so we're not looking at building a huge tower. With the costs of materials and the bells, we're looking at a good $2 million per carillon. But honestly, that makes sense. Kalos is a very financially stable region with a lot of wealth in both its present and its past. Hell, even its villains are fashionable. Diantha's also a successful movie star. She can afford it. With that being said, here are our actual final scores. And death now comes, as it does to us all, to this video. I'll see you next time.